Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about how romance is like a drug. The reason why I think it's fair to compare romance to any really addictive drug is because it kind of has the same properties as an addicting drug. You know, it's very similar because it's very much like a high dose of dopamine when you're in that infatuation stage with someone else, right? It's always that first stage of the romance, right? You fall in love with someone, and there's just that huge rush of dopamine, right? All the happy, good feelings, and so much like a drug, right? If let's take like heroin for example, right? That rush of feel good juice, right? It's the same type of feeling, or it's at least very similar, right? And when you're on it, it's great. You feel amazing. I mean, you have a partner, right? This partner, and I would say it's obviously better than a drug. You actually have real human connection there. So I would say it's actually better. Maybe not in the feelings of like pure dopamine rush. It's not comparable to heroin in like any way, but I'm just saying like the concept of like really feeling good is definitely there, and I would say that's fair to compare, right? And but just like a drug, when you come off of it and things crash and burn, it is awful. And I've never taken drugs. I've never been hooked on drugs my entire life. So I'm, just speculating. But I would say for people who are coming off of the romance high, right? Let's say you and your partner, it just didn't work out, so you guys break it off. And depending on how the relationship ends, uh, you could feel awful for a good while, right? And whereas like drug addiction, that the the withdrawals will can be lasting for a good while, like months. I think maybe even years later, you'll probably still have effects, just depending on how long you were hooked. I don't really know the real data on that, but I do know that when you come off of a good relationship and it's over, you feel awful for a good while as well. And so, just like that drug, it's very debilitating, right? You just feel very hopeless without it. You crave it, and all you want is that feeling again. But with the romance, if you can eventually move on, after some time has passed, and just by yourself. Obviously, there's other ways to get over that relationship, and that is just jumping into another one, and that would immediately fix that low of depressive, depressive level that you've sunk into, and then you would just ride that high again. There's highs and lows, and throughout a romantic relationship, there's highs and lows, depending on how well you guys get along. But the beginning, it's real high, and at the end, it's real low until you figure yourself out again, right? And it's interesting because I think for most people, the easiest way to get over someone is to just jump into another relationship, right? And yeah, we're all very much dependent on human connection in one form or another. And when you're intimately involved with someone, when you're romantically involved with someone, that's the closest, that's the most amount of human connection you can get with someone, right? Like you are all over each other, like physically, mentally, emotionally. Like you share your world together, and that's a big thing. And then to end that, it's a huge loss, right? I don't know how that compares to a drug, especially, someone who's been abusing drugs for a good part of their life. What that low feels like compared to a romantic relationship low. I don't know. And everyone deals with loss of either substances or another person differently, right? So I don't I don't really know, but it is interesting to think about that concept and how it's like, we all yearn for human connection, and so we don't really think about romance as being a drug, but it's like we all have to have it. It's like one of those cravings that you will never be able to shake. It will always be with you because you'll always want it. Now there are people who can go throughout their life and they couldn't really care less about establishing a romantic relationship with someone, but typically they have some sort of relationship with another person or thing, right? Like dogs, animals are good. They're great companions. That gives you your that's a form of love. It's not romance, but it is a form of love. But to those people that never really establish a romantic relationship, or they're just a different type of person, right? Like, for example, Nikola Tesla, he never, or Isaac Newton, from what we understand, they've never had romantic partners. Were just really into the work that they were doing. Although I think Tesla had a thing for pigeons. Like, I don't know if it was like a romantic thing. I mean, if that's the case, that's really freaking weird. But either way, like those guys are like the exception, not the rule. Most people want a romantic relationship, right? They want that established in their life. You look at anyone's bio, right, in life, and it's gonna contain a romantic relationship somewhere in there, right? Most people want that, and so we're all after this romance drug, right? It's built into our DNA. Is find a partner, be with that partner. Now, people can make, different. There's different philosophies on what humans are better equipped for, as in like a monogamous relationship or a polyamorous one where you have multiple partners. That's kind of up for debate. I honestly think, again, we can't just slap a black and white label on that and say monogamy is the way to go no matter who you are. I think that's crazy to just say that. I think there are definitely some people who are totally cool with being polyamorous, and that's just, they're built that way, right? And that's fine. I mean, that's their thing. I think, I don't know. It's kind of tough. It's a tough one because you look at divorce rates and then you're like, well, maybe monogamy isn't a thing. Maybe we're not, as humans, we're more meant for having multiple partners because that's what we did back in the day. When we were cavemen and cave women surviving, it benefited us as humans to explore other options and not just remain loyal to one person. At some point, we did evolve to staying with one partner, but that idea is more of a social construct now. And because social constructs are part of who we are, I would say that's a system that we built for ourselves, is remain with one partner. Like we more or less agree that we're not living in a constant battle for survival scenario, so things are a little different. We don't need to just be spreading our seeds everywhere to everyone as quickly as possible. That's not the state in which we live anymore. So times have changed, and now there's this social construct around romantic relationships, and that's fine. That's just something we've created. But the DNA in which we must have a romantic partner is still very much present. Like, it's very hard to go through your life as an average person and saying to yourself, I'm okay with not having a romantic partner. Some people get to that point. I know some people who they've tried multiple times throughout their life, and then they get to an age where they're just like, you know what, I'm cool with just being single and alone. And again, they outsource their their love and relationships with unconditional love through family members, friends, and they just kind of stay away from the romance department. And I've seen it happen. I know people that have done it, so it's definitely possible. And I don't blame them to a certain extent. It's like, how many more times are you gonna want to go through the motions, right? Before it's just like, is it even worth it? Is it possible? I don't really want to go through the headache again. Going back to my thing I said about in regards to the divorce rates, I think a lot of that, and why it's so high, is so many people are just so quick to jump to, well, just jump the gun on relationships, right? They jump it way too early. They're just so quick to assume that this person is the one. They're going to be with me. I'm going to be with them, and they don't really spend too much time exploring each other in the right ways, asking the right questions. Yeah, I mean, maybe they go or share the similar experiences, right? And what I mean by that is, like, they don't. Maybe they've been together for like 3 years, right? Romantically involved with each other, this couple, and 2 years in, they decide to move into with each other, right? And they're living with each other, and then 6 months go by of living with each other, like, hey, we should just get married. Well, you may have been together for 2.5 years at that point, but 2 years of that was not living with each other, right? So this 6 month period where you're learning to live with each other, like in the same space as each other, you got each other's stuff, you really get to fully observe each other's habits. Well, you only get to see that for about 6 months. And some people it's even less, right? Sometimes they jump the gun months after. Just a couple of months after they move in with each other. And it's like, you're not really seeing the full scope of that person quite yet. And even 6 months, it's like there's still some things that you may not realize that actually bother you, but it is a kind of a big deal to you. And so either way, that time period of when you just started living with each other and learning each other's habits, that's freshly new. You got to treat that as almost like the start of a new branch of the relationship, and let that fully grow out for a good while. Like, live with each other for a good couple of years with each other, and assess that, rather than just saying, well, everything else was great when we were together. It's really no different now that we're living together. It's the same old, same old. When really it's not, right? So, and then I think that's part of the reason is people jump the gun too early. They think they're forever. I think the other part of it is naivety, ignorance, or just plain infatuation. Like, they don't see past certain things, and all those small things that bother someone. If for one, if you guys don't talk it out, really work those things out before getting married, before sealing the deal, then those things won't get resolved till later. Maybe when you're married, or maybe those things will never get resolved because you never really talked about it. So it's like you got to flesh all that stuff out first. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with a failed marriage, right? So I think that's part of the problem. But the other part of the problem is people, as relationships develop and evolve, if you two aren't willing to put in the same kind of work that you did in the beginning to really, like, I call it peacocking. When you guys are like peacocking, you're just kind of showing each other like the good side of everything, and there's a lot of good energy, and and I guess that's the other part of it is like, so that peacock phase where you're just kind of showing off to each other. It's like, is that really the real you, or are you just showing the good side? But anyways, if you don't have that same kind of energy at the beginning when you felt very infatuated with each other, throughout the entire relationship, it kind of it dulls it, and then I think that leads to problems because not that like the relationship should always be filled with like high dopamine rushes of like just amazing, great, new, fun experiences all the time. But I just think you got to sprinkle that stuff in here and there, right? Like you still have to surprise each other in new and exciting ways, and show different, like the same high levels of affection with each other, but just in different ways, and try new things, and just be partners, right? That, like, just a true partnership with that person. And then the relationship never gets boring, because when in that initial infatuation phase or peacocking phase where you guys are just showing each other the good side, if that goes away, like to the point where it's like, okay, now we're not peacocking anymore, it's important to just be real with each other. Like, it's gonna be so, because you're gonna go from like something super high in that peacock phase to mediocrity. You're gonna be like, what are we doing? We're not even the same people that we were when we fell in love with each other. It's like you don't even really go to the gym that much, or you don't really cook this much. You don't really clean this much. It was all just for show, and then you guys kind of realize that we were both just putting on shows, and that doesn't work. So I think a few things need to happen, right? I think it's important to just express who you are with each other. Just be completely honest. Keep the peacocking to a minimum. I mean, it's okay to show off some things here and there. I'm not saying don't, but I'm just saying, like, if all you do is peacock, then you're gonna have many failed relationships. If you're just putting your best foot forward all the time, it's like you can't act like you're perfect and then set that as the expectation, because then it's all just downhill from there, right? Once more of you gets exposed out there with each other, and your partner will start to realize you're just full of shit, right? That's not really your lifestyle. So I think it's important to be upfront and honest with each other, if you want to maintain that. So I think that has something to do with the high divorce rates, right? But anyways, I went on a whole tangent there. But anyways, like, the next important thing when a relationship ends, right? You go through a divorce. It's important to keep yourself disciplined, right? It's so easy to just jump into another relationship, get into another high. Just like a drug. You're fixing to, okay, like, what am I gonna do without human companionship to that level? Like, it's just gone now. It's like, I gotta have it. I gotta be able to still have those things. So you just rush into the next relationship, and that becomes a failure, and you just rush. You get to the next one, and it's just failed relationship after, because you don't allow yourself enough time to heal and develop as a person naturally. So it's important to recognize that and discipline yourself a little bit. Just tell yourself, hey, this healing process is better for me if I just do it naturally, than rather than trying to artificially inject myself with another relationship and exhibit another high just for the sake of feeling good, right? And we all can kind of get lost in that, and it's very easy to do that. I think that's most people's natural instinct is like, okay, if this relationship clearly cannot be repaired, and that person is done with me, they don't want anything to do with me. It's, I would say 9 times out of 10, most people are looking to get like into another relationship. Maybe that's a high figure. Maybe it's not quite that high, but a lot of people, and I would say especially guys, because they're not as emotionally disciplined in that department as women. I think women are a bit more mature in that, like, okay, I'm gonna just really take a break. Men are just like, all right, next person, next person. They go in headstrong. They're just looking, that alpha mentality, and that that can be destructive, just like a drug, right? You're over abusing the idea of a human connection to that level, right? So it's just like anything, it's important to recognize that and realize, okay, this is an addiction pattern. Like, I'm addicted to the human connectivity, and don't get me wrong, that's human connectivity on that level, on a romantic level, is such a powerful thing. Everyone wants it. Like, how can you say no to that? But what's important is recognizing, am I jumping the gun too quick, and am I just addicted to the high? Right? You got to ask yourself that. Are you just afraid of being alone? Are you afraid of not being able to hug someone every night, or kiss someone, or like what are the things that you're really after? Like, if you are looking for a genuine, real connection with someone, you're not gonna jump so quickly into the next relationship. Maybe by some miracle you do find the next, your soulmate right after the last relationship. But what are the odds of that? Especially in your emotional state of this low that you just hit, to assume that the next person you find immediately after is going to be your soulmate is insane. Like, you got to take a few steps back and just, like, if you do find someone, great, but I think you got to take things slow and really assess, like, okay, like, got to make sure this isn't just addictive behavior that I'm falling into, and really just try to look at the relationship as what it is. So, and I think that's where it can be dangerous, because then a lot of people kind of get into, when you just like with anything, when you mess with your dopamine receptors too much, when you're constantly going in and out of a relationship, and you're constantly abusing a drug or substance, or it could be anything. Anytime you're just abusing your dopamine receptors, right? You are making it harder for yourself to experience the full benefits of that thing, right? The more you abuse that, just like a drug, just like substance, like caffeine, for example, right? Caffeine can be kind of addictive. I would really, I don't know. You can kind of classify it as a drug, more or less. I mean, it does have some amazing capabilities. I know when I take caffeine, I feel totally different, like a whole different person, in all the great ways too. Like, it's insane. I'm a lot more alert. My focus is just on point, and I'm super bubbly as a person. I become super outgoing. Like, I'm pretty outgoing, but just caffeine takes it to another level. Well, I know people who will abuse caffeine. I mean, and everyone at this point knows someone who abuses caffeine. They drink it every time, all the time, multiple times throughout the day. They're sipping on Red Bulls or coffee or whatever. America's hooked on fucking caffeine. But as these caffeine addicts know, when you're abusing it, it takes more to get you to that same level, right? That it once did. I space my caffeine intake out on purpose so that way it doesn't happen, right? I take pre-workout. That's usually the caffeine that I'm not referring to when I'm taking it. I mean, every now and then I'll have a coffee, but usually it's for workout purposes. And I only drink pre-workout once or twice, maybe a week. Twice sometimes. Like usually when I'm taking pre-workout, it's like on Monday when I'm off and I plan on spending well over 2 hours in the gym. Um, then I'll definitely take some pre-workout. But I'm aware of the the addictive capabilities, and if I abused it, well then it just wouldn't have the same effect, and I would have to like take 2 scoops of and of like 400 milligrams of caffeine. Like that's a shitload. When 200 used to be enough, now it's 400. And but anyway, so just anytime you're like messing with your brain chemicals, because all this, everything that happens emotionally in our brains, it's all just chemical reactions. So again, when you're hopping in and out of a romantic relationship, you're messing with those receptors in the same way that you would if you abused caffeine, in the exact same way. So it's like you have to be careful, because you do that too much and it is not going to be the same into your next relationship, and that could hurt it. I mean, that could be potentially your soulmate, but because you don't really, those effects of romance have kind of withered away because you've gone through it like 20 times. Like, you're not going to really have the same impact uh, that you would, had you just kind of chilled out a little bit. So I don't know, just important to recognize romance as a potential addictive drug, and I think a lot of people kind of get trapped in that and they don't quite realize. I think really most things can become very addicting or exhibit drug-like properties, and you don't even really realize it. Most people wouldn't consider caffeine a drug, but I would say, yeah, sure, it basically is. Same thing with sugar, super addicting. I mean, if anything that you get addicted to and it's really hard for you to not crave, it's basically a drug, you know? Um, like I don't necessarily have to go outside and physically touch grass. If I can avoid touching grass, then I would say that's not an addictive trait. If every time I had to go outside and touch grass, like physically, yeah, that would be addicting behavior. That would be an addiction. Um, Although that I don't think that would be entirely unhealthy. I guess it just kind of depends on what you're doing out there and for how long. But anyways, yep. Anyway, that's just my take on romance as a drug. I don't know, for some reason it just really dawned on me today. I was like, yeah, it's very addicting and it can exhibit drug like patterns. So I was like, kind of want to talk about it. But anyways, that's all I have for you. Have a great day.